What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about a leak that Injustice 3 is not the next game from NetherRealm. Now, this doesn't sound very likely. I'll tell you right from the beginning. Normally, I save this a little while. I really don't think this sounds right. We're going to go over, where this came from, what was actually said, and I'll give my analysis. But just to kind of, come out in front of this, I really don't think this is going to end up being true. But again, just my opinion. And before I jump in, really quickly, want to promote that Discord server. A lot of you guys have been joining recently. Really great to see. We're getting very close to 500 members. I know I've said that for a little while, but we are growing, and it's a really nice community. We talk about a lot of different things there. We plan different events, gaming nights, movie nights. So if you guys have not yet joined, this is the first time you guys have seen the channel. The Discord will be in the description below. The Twitter's also there. We're everywhere. We're on Twitter, Discord. I have a second channel. Lots of different stuff going on. But if you guys want to check that out, definitely check out the description below. Okay, so here we go. This is now the first thing I guess we should say is that I believe this came from Reddit. So that's, I think, firstly, a big thing that you have to take into consideration, right? And I believe it's also said that it's an individual who claims they work for them. So this is a person who works for them, which means they've signed a bunch of NDAs that they aren't able or they aren't allowed to do this. So if this person is real and they do work for them, they're in major trouble. Major trouble if they ever get caught. But here's what they say. Hello, I work with NetherRealm's Studios. I will not name my exact position as I fear what I'm about to tell you will put myself at risk. It absolutely will if this is true. First, I would like to deconfirm the leaks that have surfaced the past few days. Doomslayer will not make an appearance on in MK11. Neither will John Wick, Deathstroke, or Michael Myers. Now, those are amazing characters. I don't know if that was a rumor that came out. I didn't see it, but I would love all those characters in that game. Also, and he kind of just drops this as like a smaller thing. Also, Injustice 3 will not be our next title. You go through the Mortal Kombat thing, and then Injustice just kind of comes out like, and by the way, it's not coming out. Please stop believing everything you see online when there is no evidence, audio files, images, source code, etc. I'm afraid I will not be leaking any significant information here, but I can tell you that there will indeed be a Combat Pack 3. It will include 4 characters, 3 male and 1 female guest character, with one of the MK characters being an unfortunate bystander. I've sent a moderator of the subreddit a picture confirming this. While blank has slowed us down a little, there will not be huge delays in the release schedule, as most of the content has already been made or is close to completion. No ETA yet. P.S. There are currently internal discussions on whether Melina should make an appearance in the game as a playable character. So obviously this was more Mortal Kombat themed, right? It was talking a lot about Mortal Kombat. The articles that I've read or I've seen has really focused in on the Injustice thing, and I do think that's important. Again, Injustice was kind of, it really, as you read that entire thing, and I read the first half before I recorded this, I didn't read the full thing. As you read the full thing, it's 1,000% Mortal Kombat, and then there's just that, really, it's 99% Mortal Kombat, and then he throws in, oh yeah, and Injustice 3 isn't our next game. And honestly, here's the thing, that's the biggest sign to me that the leak is probably overall not true. Now I guess maybe the Mortal Kombat stuff can happen, but there's a lot of people that talk about Mortal Kombat. There's a lot of very smart people that talk about it. There's a lot of people that make predictions that turn out to be right. People that do some pretty heavy digging in terms of Mortal Kombat. So, if this is a guy who's gone off of, past things or gone off of things that other people have said, I don't doubt that these kind of things won't happen. But like I said, I don't look up Mortal Kombat news every day, but I look up gaming news. I've never seen any leak or any talk that those characters were in discussion to come to Mortal Kombat. So that's the first I've seen of them. But again, I'm not saying that means anything. It's just that I haven't seen them. But the Injustice thing, that flat out just doesn't make sense. In fact, we have Ed Boon, who's literally talked about, how he knows that the studio goes Mortal Kombat, Injustice, he knows that is the order, and they've even hinted that, Injustice 3 is next, and then after that, we're not sure if we would do, and I guess he's also said, we know how big Mortal Kombat's gone, but, we want to make our own game, like a brand new game. We want to try different things. We've talked about this actually a few weeks ago that they mentioned, or Ed Boon did an interview, I think with Jeff Keighley, right, where he talked about, hey, we want to get out of this genre, or we want to just do different things. And people say, is the Marvel versus DC game coming? All that kind of stuff. But I think because as far as I know, it's one studio. Unless, obviously NetherRealm, factually, is one studio, but I think there's only one team in there. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm totally up for that, but I don't believe there's two full, and I do mean full because I understand that obviously there would be a small group of people still working on Mortal Kombat 11's DLC while the main team is working on Injustice 3. That's just how, in a studio that's got one, in a studio that only has one studio, okay, normally that's how it goes, is you have a small group of people that can still focus, like, if the game needs to, will focus on the game that had already come out, but for the most part, the rest of the team has moved on, even actually when the game is going to release, right? Say Naughty Dog, even with, like, The Last of Us Part 2, well, we know they actually have two teams. Naughty Dog has two teams. The second team is working on a brand new game. Okay, now that second team was the one who made Lost Legacy. And obviously we know, like, Uncharted 3, and then when The Last of Us came out, that's when that split of the studios came, right? That's when Neil Druckmann was basically handed the reins to it. But we know they have two teams. But even that, you have to imagine the Neil Druckmann team has started thinking about what they're doing next and probably has some prototype things going on, even though The Last of Us Part 2 isn't out yet. That's just how gaming developers work. So, okay, so unless, basically what I'm trying to say, why am I arguing all this? Basically what I'm saying is, I think at most they could only be working on one other game. So part of the team is working on Mortal Kombat 11, and if Injustice 3 isn't their next game, that means something else is. Now, we've heard from other leaks that Injustice 3 wouldn't come out until 2022. Now, that's a year later than normal. Normally, as we've seen, I remember actually in that video, I went back all the way back, I think like for the past like 10 years, they have gone every 2 years. They've managed for like 4 or 5 games to go literally every 2 years, a brand new game comes out. That's very hard to do, and also we've seen that happen with other developers before, and then at a certain point, it becomes too much and they start taking longer. So I'm not saying it's impossible it takes 3 years to do it, right? I think if it takes 3 years, it takes 3 years. But if they're making another game first, and it's not Injustice, and then Injustice 3 is after that, there is no way Injustice 3 comes out in 2022. And also, I just don't know why you would do something like that when you very clearly, and yeah, these games could go on forever, and you probably don't want them to go on forever, and they don't want them to go on forever. But I mean, literally, the system you have is you just did Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat is that franchise, by the way, that you can just keep making more of. And then Injustice, well, you very clearly can end it at 3. In fact, I think everybody is fully on board and knowing that Injustice 3 is probably the end. So why would you stop here? You know what I mean? Why do Mortal Kombat and then do something else and not, because you've already gone back and forth twice, just make Injustice 3, then you would probably assume Mortal Kombat 12 is after that, and then you have your brand new game, right? A game that's outside the fighting genre, or maybe a Marvel versus DC game, you know, or whatever. Or maybe you do take a long break from Mortal Kombat. I don't know. But it just seems very, very odd that this guy in this Mortal Kombat thread, basically, he just comes out and says, oh yeah, Injustice 3 isn't happening. It's not our next game. Very, very odd. I don't think you, again, if this guy is for real, then he's going to be in some serious trouble if anybody ever finds who this is, because you can't say stuff like that. And to come out and just say, you know, and also to not say what the game is, I think that's actually more important. So you can tell us that Injustice 3 isn't your next game, but you can't tell us what is. You know what I mean? Seems like something where you're just kind of putting it out there. And again, we've heard leaks in the past that have said, yes, Injustice 3 is their next game. Okay, so it very, very much contradicts what we've already heard. Even Ed Boon, as recently as a few weeks ago, was talking about Mortal Kombat in Injustice. He knows how important, how popular these games are. Injustice sold extremely well. Injustice has been a very, very good franchise for them, you know, since they started it. You don't end it on 2. Again, they've gone back and forth twice already. Why not finish it off with 3? So personally, for me, I don't believe these leaks. Again, it's hard to comment on the more, maybe you could find some more holes in the Mortal Kombat stuff that he said. I personally can't, just because, again, I'm not into, you know, I bought Mortal Kombat 11 day 1. I actually did cover that game, but I'm not like super into it. I don't like look for the news for Mortal Kombat like every single day. So maybe you guys, if you guys are into Mortal Kombat or you guys have seen like news, maybe you can poke more holes. If it's, I mean, if this guy turns out to be true, then fine. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible that this guy is right, but if you guys know more about Mortal Kombat than me, which isn't hard, if you guys want to try and see if you can poke more holes into what he says, definitely let me know in the comments. I'm all ears and I'd love to hear it. Okay, so guys, guys, let me know again what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think Injustice 3 truly isn't the next game from them? Do you think it is? What do you think about the Mortal Kombat stuff he talked about? Let me know. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to our YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when these videos go up. And thank you so much for watching. Whenever Injustice 3 does happen, I mean, obviously, if it's many, many years away, then it kind of goes out the window. But when this game gets closer, I really do want to cover it. I'm very, very excited for it. I've played the Injustice games. They're a whole lot of fun. So I'll definitely be covering Injustice going forward. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.